do carry out public functions.
She has other ways. That's why I'm carefully explaining it. She has
anyway,
other ways
that's not the bottom of our discourse now.
Why it is important is like, look at the president's wife. We all are witnesses of what have been transferred in the villa. She just returned after a certain fellow who appears to be playing God was removed there, which is an aberration, a pleasure. So that's what we're saying. The quality, because that ordinarily, now, why is it difficult? Can't public leaders from the level of the president, senate president, local government chairman, governor, don't they have some sense of dignity? Why would they always think that the government house and their public duty to the people is their private business? Therefore, the people don't have, in fact, you see, this theory of power belongs to the people. Nigeria is the only nation that in the 22 years of our democratic experience is yet to experience it. That it clearly manifests, like, for example, if it's more educated and more politically conscious societies, the delay, the manner in which the president is not responding to this NSAS report is enough reason, Flora, for people to hit the street.
All right, let me talk to the guest on Zoom. Prof there now, Barrister Henry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Flora. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Prof Peter, can you hear me? Okay, I think we're still struggling with his network there. It's joining from Edo State, having that challenge. Okay, Henry Ekene, according to the report says President Muhammadu Buhari admitting the federal government of the day. I'm sure you've been following the conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been listening to.
Okay, good. Said that the government of the day has to agree that they've lost control of the situation, that is the first step to restoring stability to the country. I'm also asking you the question, what does it take for a sitting president to admit losing control? That's one. Again, from what is currently playing out, I think I read the news 2 days ago, bandits invaded Kaduna State, killing so many. Boko Haram insurgents, ISWAP taking over some local government in Zamfara State. All of these and more we're witnessing. And again, police brutality, police brutality, which he has been citing as a point that happened last year. And of course, we saw the Judicial Council release the report, and we saw the army indicted in the Nigerian police. Even Lagos state government was also indicted, although we're waiting for the white paper. Putting all of these indices in place, is it obvious that the government of the day has actually failed?
Yes, thank you, Flora. There are two fundamental group of factors that will give an indication whether a state is failing, rather whether a state is weak, whether it's failing, whether it has failed or collapsed. This could be internal factors and external factors. And then taking out the internal factors, you would find failures in this regard, as you have recounted, where the state has failed in this primary responsibility of ensuring security and welfare of the citizens, and of course, failing to provide certain basic fundamental infrastructure in the state, and failing also to maintain the power of the state, that's the hegemony, to be able to control the state and prevent this kind of incidents of non-state actors acting as if they are state actors, and also challenging the state authorities and the state actors. The external factors would include probably your loss of control of your participation or involvement in the international community, or of course even maintaining relations with other members of the international community. Now, but in the context in Nigeria, you find a situation where we have more of the internal factors challenging the existence and the sustenance of states in Nigeria, because I think that the external factors are quite more intact. We have our international relations and our membership in international organizations maintained, and of course international diplomatic relations maintained. So looking inwards, we have these challenges of security, challenges of failure of infrastructure, challenge of failure to provide basic services to the people, and then of course insurgency, insecurity, violence, ethnic and probably religious crisis, perhaps all the corners of this country. So all these are indicators of really a failing or a failed state. So if the president, being a realist, if he thinks he is, by admitting, yes, indeed, I will agree, that is the one point for you to admit your failures, and so that the next that will be expected to do is for you to begin to show very clearly how you intend to change. I mean, to bring a change and to address those challenges, those failures. So we didn't need the president to admit that there is no security in this country. We didn't need the president to admit that there is failure of infrastructure in this country. We didn't need the president to admit that there is insurgency. Of course, on the high point, we didn't even need the president to admit that there have been times that territories within the borders of this country have been hijacked and taken by non-state actors. And very recently, too, you hear even state governors, which of course are components of the Nigerian state, declaring that certain parts of their own state have been overrun by bandits or, of course, other criminal elements. And all parts of this country, you have those experiences, and some are similar with those indicators of a failed state. So apparently, the Nigerian state is at the verge of failing. I wouldn't admit that we really have completely failed.
Okay.
It is far from even being collapsed. So we haven't really completely failed, because even when we experience those attempts by insurgents, militant groups, bandits, and all other groups, criminal groups, attempting to take charge, we have also had situations where state agents are actually reacting to a measure that I think that can be considered as a reaction by states. So ultimately, we really have to check ourselves so we don't degenerate beyond this point to a truly failed state and what's still to be a collapsed state.
Okay, but do you agree with the Council of Foreign Relations and Harvard Kennedy School saying the first step to restoring the state is by admitting to have lost control? Do you agree to that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. And I've said so.
What is the implication? What is the implication of that if the president agreed? What do you think it will imply? It will put Nigeria through before international community, before other African countries?
No, it's a credible one, I would say. I with respect to any divergent view anybody would hold, but I think it's a good one that a leader should be real and truthful to the realities in his society or in his state. So the reality I have painted, I've said, is that we have these challenges. So for you to admit that indeed we are confronted with these challenges is not a weakness, really. It's also not kind of positioning you in a way that the international community is. I think rather it's like a call for a collective. You remember that even the report alluded to the fact that breakdown of law and order in one society has an effect in another society, either in regional consideration or even global consideration. So to admit indeed that we have challenge and we have crisis here, I think is not quite dangerous. It's also to admit that you recognize that these are the challenges that you have. And then perhaps what we expect of you is to say what measures you really strategic, of course, you really are advancing to contain these challenges. And where you probably need external help, you do so. Because if you pretend that you do not have these challenges, then of course you would also not be able to be strategic in advancing solutions to them and may not even get help from those who probably would want to seek to come provide help to you. So I do not think that is anything to condemn if a leader admits that we have challenges and this is the extent to which we have lost in this regard, and these are the efforts we are making. That is the part that is remaining, really. These are the efforts we are making to contain those challenges.
Okay, quite interesting. The Council on Foreign Relations, Harvard Kennedy School, warned that Nigerian failure as a state we have a great negative consequence of peace and security in West African sub-region as well as Europe and the US. The question is, what is this consequence and how does this affect our relationship with other international community? Barrister Henry.
Clearly, you could take it from the point of view of insurgency and terrorism. Terrorism has become a global menace, really. And so when you have a ground, when you have a state, perhaps maybe a failed one or even a collapsed state would have been where there's probably no state structure at all, very weak and probably non-existent institution. And then you find it as a gathering, a festing ground for criminals, insurgents, and terrorists. And then the effect has always been that They converge at such very comfortable places, and then near acts of terrorism and criminality, and of course, by extension, the entire society. So the international community is seeking to have a safer world, a safer international relation, so that you don't have a situation where there should have been a failed state, where you would probably begin to see terrorists and, of course, insurgents and other criminally minded individuals finding those places a place of heaven to take off on their criminal behaviors. So it has that effect. And take, for instance, the African region, where Nigeria plays a very pivotal role. No doubt that cannot be taken away from Nigeria. And that's why the worry is that if Nigeria is failing and eventually becomes a failed state, and God forbid a collapsed state, it will have direct effects on other African countries, not only in the West African sub-region, but on the entire African region, and by extension, the globe. Now, talk about international relations between Nigeria and other countries. Countries have economic investment and even political interest and other kinds of interests in other countries. So you could say the diplomatic relation we have with other countries, if there is problem in Nigeria, it will affect all the nations that we have diplomatic relations with. It will affect all the countries that have investment in this country. So that is to the extent that the stability of a state may have effect on other states. And that's why other countries and other states would be interested in how stable even your country would be. And that's the essence of this concern by the study of those scholars, beginning to draw the Nigerian state to the attention that all is not going well in this country. Of course, insurgency, banditry, criminality, militancy, and failure of providing welfare and security to the people, which of course will lead to a worse situation, is of concern.
Okay, let's quickly touch another area which they also pointed out. Upholding the rule of law is one aspect that needs to be given attention to. What do you think should be done in that regard?
Yes, apparently one of the indicators of a failed state will be our sense of rule of law, a breakdown of rule of law. And what is rule of law? The predominance or supremacy of the law as distinguished from mere arbitrariness and alternatives that are not laws. And how does that play out in a failed state, where you find non-state actors making orders and declarations and probably even against what the legitimate authority may even issue, and then you find a situation of apparent disobedience of law and order, pronouncements of courts, and abuse of rights of citizens. These are indicators, of course, even failure of democracy and liberal governance. These are indicators of the lack of rule of law, breakdown of rule of law. And a society, they would always say, where there are no laws and there is no order, then of course there will be lawlessness. And then insurgency, banditry, militancy will become very common in that society. And then that apparently is an indication of failed state as well. So the Nigerian state, or any state at that, have to actually hold on to that hegemony of the state, that is a part of the state, to be able to enforce laws and ensure that good laws are made and citizens and even residents obey laws. So failure to obey laws and abuse of laws and court orders, or rather what you generally would say absence of rule of law, is an indication of a failed state, really.
All right, thank you so much. I'll come back to you. Let's talk about reviving weak. Let's assume we're at the weak stage now. Let's not assume to be failed or collapse. Let's take the weak. We've got 4 stages: the strong, the weak, the failed, and the collapse. And Barrister Henry said he does not agree that as a collapse, we're in the collapse stage, but maybe at the failing. But let's say in the course of you failing, there's this weak aspect. So let's leave it at the weak aspect. Now, Nigeria, according to the report as well, Nigeria has long termed on the precipice of failure, but now unable to keep its citizens safe and secure. Nigeria has become fully failed, but of critical geopolitical concern. What is the geopolitical concern part? Again, what effect does it have on African countries?
You see, before then, let's still look at, there is a conclusive kind of sentence in one of the lines when they say failed states are violent.
Okay.
In the report. Let us look at the meaning. In our social reality, our social political culture, take for example the relationship between law enforcers or agencies and citizens. Just recently I had experience I needed to invite the police. The complainant is always subject to bear the brunt first. That is, you hear something like, give us money for fuel, pay right at one day. That is violence. You vote, you now have a system where elected officials or appointed go to police stations. If you have 1 million naira in your account, you can buy 10, 15 mobile police officers escorting you to social events. Where ordinarily in a democratic Nigeria, it is such opportunities the ordinary people who actually donated their power collectively should interface and help you to understand relevant policies and programs that will better their lot or improve their living condition. But what they get is, at every point, they are being pointed AK-47 by security officers. Remember, you are a private citizen or even appointed, and there is nowhere in our law books. That's why sometimes one of the IG said they are going to withdraw all these unnecessary. It's only the president, the vice president, governors. But as I talk to you, even local government chairman aides, private corporate captains of industry, or even just somebody who has just a shopping mall, he goes about to the extent even the military had been dragged. That is violence. So when we say violence, not only when an organized group come out agitating for self-determination, no, we are talking about the right of the citizen to freely live in that society and exercise and express himself without harassment and